This is Meteo Mundo.
Hello, friends. I am Meteo Mundo Chief Meteorologist Rusty McCraney, and I want to welcome you to our live stream regarding Tropical Storm Tammy. Now, if you've been following along, we talked about this disturbance over the last several days. Well, now we have a tropical storm, and I wanted to come on live, and we're just going to take it real slow during this live stream. We're going to break down this first advisory from the National Hurricane Center. We'll take a look at the track that the Hurricane Center has, obviously the intensity that Tammy could bring, and obviously the potential impacts to portions of the windward in the Leeward Islands. Thank you so much for joining us here live on YouTube. Again, hitting the like button helps us out. If you have a question, throw it in the chat. I'll be going over all of those, and we'll be talking about your questions and answering those. We have a chat moderator in there to help out as well. The first thing I really want to do, though, if you're just tuning in, I want to kind of go over all of the new information with this first advisory from the Hurricane Center, and then we're going to take it kind of day by day and section by section of islands and break down a lot of different things. Like I said, we have all the time of the world here, so thank you for tuning in. You can see on the top of your screen, that is the newest information, the first official advisory from the Hurricane Center. Again, we went from a disturbance to a tropical depression, so we didn't even hit the tropical depression phase. Quickly, we had winds of over 40 miles an hour develop within this disturbance, and that's why the Hurricane Center went ahead and made it a tropical storm. So again, winds are 40 miles an hour. It is moving very quickly to the west at 23, but that's kind of an estimated track as far as speed goes right now. The center of circulation really is just forming at this point in time, and so the Hurricane Center has that initial motion west at 23, going to be a little bit slower than that for sure, and the pressure right now is 1,007 millibars. Tammy is forecast to stay a tropical storm as it moves through portions of the central and northern Windward Islands and then on through the Leeward Islands, and we'll talk a lot more about the timing of this as well. But as early as late tomorrow night, we could start to see some tropical storm conditions in portions of the Windward Islands. And you can see that first forecast track. And again, we always talk about never focusing on that center line because the impacts of these systems are felt well away from that, as a matter of fact. And that's exactly what we're going to see here. That cone of uncertainty is in the white. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to take off this red area because now we don't need to even worry about that formation zone now that we actually have Tammy. So let's take a look, first of all, at what this looks like at this point in time. First of all, we've had a good blow up of showers and storms on the western and the southwestern sides of Tammy. So it's looked better throughout the last couple of days. I mentioned in the video earlier today, it just kept looking more and more impressive, and this does not shock me at all that we have a tropical storm out of this. Again, it's still fighting a little bit of shear. You can see that on the northeast side. We don't have as much convection compared to the southern and the western sides, but overall, it's going to be running into very little shear in exceptionally warm water temperatures. Water temperatures are in the mid and the upper 80s, 29 to 30 degrees Celsius as it moves towards the Windward Islands. So how far are we away right now? Well, let's look at that. Let's go to our friends in Barbados. I'm going to switch over to our measuring tool. Going to give you a good idea of just how far in distance that we are away. Let me move that back for you real quick. And we'll take a look at just how far away we are from Barbados and the center of Tammy. So drawing that out right now, we're about 550 miles or so. Of course, that would be the closest and first approach to an island, and then would that turn up to the north and to the west. So again, that's kind of the broad brush perspective of Tammy. Let's also talk about the current watches and warnings that are in effect. Now, if you look at this center line, you're going to see these areas in blue that we have lined up right now. We have tropical storm watches in effect for Barbados, Dominica, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. What that means is tropical storm conditions are likely in your area over the next 48 hours. And for these areas, again, the weather will start to go down late tomorrow evening, but especially during the day on Friday. And if Tammy keeps this track and keeps the strength and is forecast to strengthen, more than likely additional watches and warnings are going to be hoisted up for areas farther up to the north. And that would basically include all of the Leeward Islands, all the way up and towards Anguilla and portions of St. Kitts and Nevis and Barbuda and Montserrat, maybe even portions of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. It all depends on the track. But again, at this point in time, we have tropical storm watches in effect for Barbados, Dominica, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. So let's look at where the intensity could be. So I can put on this right here. Now, the timestamp you're going to see is not correct, and I apologize for that, but I'll kind of manually stair step through you. So as we get into tomorrow morning, we have winds of 45 miles an hour with some gusts up to 60. As we move into the afternoon hours, we start to see some strengthening out of Tammy, winds 55, maybe even 60 miles an hour. And it's that kind of strength that's anticipated as it moves closer to the islands late tomorrow night and then throughout the day on Friday. The Hurricane Center basically has Tammy staying with winds of 55 knots. Those are winds approximately of 65 miles an hour, and you can see that on the forecast track. Maximum winds of 63, gusts up to 75. So the potential for some hurricane force wind gusts along the center and the eastern side of that circulation. But again, we never look at one point, but it is interesting to note that the center line from the Hurricane Center does take it right over a lot of island areas as well. So speaking of that, let's kind of go over those areas real quickly here. I'm going to take off this formation zone once again, and you can see our computer models, our spaghetti plots are running. And just notice that again that the Hurricane Center is really much in line with the majority of those models. We'll talk about the stronger GFS model coming up and then the weaker European model. But as I mentioned in my video earlier today, that the stronger storms with the models try and recurve a little bit quicker to the north. The weaker storms take it through the island. So at least we're talking about potentially, keeping this a tropical storm. It doesn't look like we'll be talking about a hurricane moving through the Lesser Antilles here. But again, impacts, absolutely. And we'll get to those specific impacts coming up in just a little bit. But let's get into some of the areas here. And I want to kind of do a little bit of a zoom in here. Let's start with the areas up north that could be impacted. They include Barbuda, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Guadeloupe. And then as we get into the southern sides of this, again, I want to take off this red area. Sorry about that. Barbados, you are just outside of the area. So from St. Vincent and the Grenadines south, including Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, I don't expect any direct impacts out of Tammy to your area. We're going to have that recurve to the north and west. And again, the strongest winds, the heaviest rain will be on the center and the eastern sides of the circulation. So even for Martinique, look, if Martinique can stay just west of where Tammy decides to recurve, you're going to get some impacts, but you may not see the more significant impacts compared to an area like Guadeloupe, who might be right over the track or just to the east of the track. So that's always something interesting when you're dealing with a lot of different islands. There's Montserrat, there's Antigua, there's Barbuda. So again, all of these areas certainly potentially impacted by it. So let me show you the GFS model, and this is going to be one of those stronger models. I'm going to put this into motion for you here. I actually got to reset the time frame. I was looking at this just before we came on the air, wanted to make sure I had all the details, but this is the reflectivity out of it. And again, the GFS model has been one of the stronger models. It's going to keep the core of Tammy just east of the islands, just east of the Leeward Islands. That would be great. We've mentioned it the last several days that a stronger storm more than likely would recurve a little bit quicker, but the Hurricane Center is kind of taking the weaker tracks, but a stronger storm, meaning that the European model, which goes right through the islands, is a weaker storm than what the Hurricane Center is actually showing you. It's much more in line with what the GFS model is, but again, also doesn't allow for that quicker recurve as well. So if we were looking at this is about the closest approach. Again, we'll use our spatial tool to see just how close we'll be. Let's go from Montserrat and we'll zoom out. And you can see it's about 200 miles from the center. But even right now, we do have tropical storm force winds that extend 140 miles to the northeast of the center. So again, on the eastern sides, we have tropical storm winds up to 140 miles from the center of circulation already, and more than likely Tammy will just continue to wrap up. Let's look at those winds as a matter of fact for you here, and we'll go through that product as well. These are going to be the wind gusts from the GFS model. I'm going to show you several different models coming up, so not just one solution. Look, we never put all of our eggs in one basket, but you can see again, there is a good core of tropical storm force winds, moderate to high-end tropical storm force winds. When you look at these gusts, that'll be scraping the northern sides of the islands from Martinique and Guadeloupe and Anguilla on over towards Barbados. All of those areas certainly with the potential, and this is a model that keeps it farther away. If we kind of translate what the Hurricane Center is thinking, that core of wind is going to be moving through the island. So wind impacts look to be a little bit higher now. Certainly rain impacts as well. And as a matter of fact, I'll go over some of the key messages here. Tammy is expected to produce 3 to 6 inches of rain, maximum potentially even up to 10 inches of rain across the central, the northern Windward Islands and the Leeward Islands, 1 to 2 inches, maybe even up to 4 for the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and into Puerto Rico. And obviously surf and sea conditions are going to be kicked up as well. I've actually got a graphic to show you on that. But again, core of these winds, it's going to be all about where Tammy is located, because there's a high degree of certainty this is going to be a medium to high end tropical storm. All right. And it's just how quickly do we get that recurve? We hope that on the GFS model, it's slightly east of the islands. But again, the center track from the Hurricane Center does not buy in that solution. It does have it going right over the islands. Speaking of rain, again, I want to take a look at the rainfall totals on this map. And if you watched the video from earlier today, you saw a core of rain from the GFS model that was over 10 inches. It's anywhere that you see yellow, that's accumulated rainfall totals of over 10 inches of rain. The green is actually off scale, over 14 inches. Again, we keep the core of the heaviest rain offshore on the GFS model, but the Hurricane Center is certainly going above what we're seeing on this model. As a matter of fact here, I can actually query this. I can literally just take this as we go island by island. You see that the rain is not as significant on the GFS model if the recurve occurs earlier. Again, you can see what I'm saying about the significant rain here. There's your 14 inches I was talking about. So again, we don't expect that even with the track that the Hurricane Center has, but it just shows you that this recurve and when it happens is going to be paramount into what the islands actually end up seeing. So that's kind of the broad brush of things. I want to kind of talk about some of the other aspects of the storm, and then we'll look at the timing as well. First of all, the probability of tropical storm force winds. And again, this is with the first advisory from the Hurricane Center. You see that there are fairly high, at least moderate chances for tropical storm force winds. Those are going to be winds that are going to be averaging over 39 miles per hour as Tammy moves through. I mean, obviously you're talking about the potential for some damage, some trees down, power outages because of that as well. So I would put the wind issue with Tammy in the moderate category right now, and we'll just have to see how much Tammy spins up out of that as well. Switching on, oops, sorry about that. Looks like I lost one of the graphics. There we go. If we go to the GFS model, you can actually see that that core is moving up to the north and to the east. And the reason why the GFS model is actually pulling that way is because the ridge in the Atlantic is weaker on the GFS model, allowing for that quicker recurve. So that would be the reason why. I want to switch over here real quickly, guys. I've got a couple of different graphics I want to show you. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do it, but I'm going to try. Hopefully it'll work from here. Okay, this is the GFS tracks. These are the newest updated ones. The areas in black, that's the ensemble mean, meaning that what's the average of the GFS models? You notice that it is just east of the area. Looking at the potential impacts from the region again. Just want to make sure we have the right ones. Looks like I'm skipping a couple of graphics here. That's okay, guys. We'll take it kind of graphic by graphic. That's fine. This is the European model. I can step away and step back on. No big deal. This is the European model. And again, you can see that it's a little bit farther west, more impacts to the islands, but I'll also show you that it's going to be a weaker storm on the GFS model. So the GFS model, again, weaker, but more into the actual islands. Let's take a look at the intensity of Tammy on the GFS model. Now, earlier today, this black line was in the category 1 strength. That's not the case anymore. We're looking more at a tropical storm throughout its life. The Hurricane Center actually thinks as Tammy moves north of the Leeward Islands, it could actually strengthen a little bit more, becoming a very high-end tropical storm, maybe teetering on category 1 hurricane strength. But again, that is as it moves away from the island. So hopefully that will be the case. And then you'll see on the European model's intensity, again, it's a little bit lower. As it moves through the islands, you're looking at winds of somewhere around 50 miles an hour. I also want to take a look, guys, at the wave heights, because that is going to be pretty significant. Surf and sea conditions are going to be kicked up. I wanted to show you this broad perspective first so you can get an idea of the scale. Anywhere in yellow or higher are 10-foot waves, and that looks to be likely, at least for a time, with Tammy as Tammy moves west towards the Windward Islands and begins that recurve. So again, if you look at the scale, anything in the yellows to oranges and red are waves of over 10 feet. When I zoom in a little bit closer on this same imagery, you'll see that again, for the eastern sides of the islands. Again, if you live on the eastern side of anywhere across the central northern windward and the Leeward Islands, and this would even include portions of the British Virgin Islands and the eastern sides of Puerto Rico, we are going to kick up the surf and sea conditions beginning tomorrow night, throughout the day Friday, Saturday, and then beginning to pull away with a pickup in forward speed late Saturday night and into Sunday. But wave heights of over 10 feet are absolutely possible out of that system. So again, I want to keep switching graphics here because I want to find the ones that I want to talk about first. Okay, this is the one I wanted to get to. We can start breaking down the actual times of arrival. I want to kick this out of the way just a little bit if I can. So here we are right now, Wednesday evening. This is the estimated times of tropical storm force winds of over 39 miles an hour reaching your area. And you can see that on that track, as we get into tomorrow evening, it will start to impact portions of the Windward Islands. And then as we go overnight into Friday morning, right through the heart of the central and the northern Windward Islands, and then as we go through the day on Friday. So the bottom line is, really starting Friday morning, for a lot of the areas that I mentioned, it's going to go downhill. We're going to have a lot of rain. We're going to have those gusty winds, and that track takes it right over the islands. At this point in time, if the track from the first advisory for the Hurricane Center holds true, we're going to get the core of Tammy right over the islands that I just mentioned, with all the potential impacts that we'll talk much more about coming up. But there's less and less time for this to make a quick jog west, or especially that recurve north and east. What we really want to have happen actually is to get that recurve to occur quicker to the north and to the east. That would be the best thing that we could absolutely see out of us. All right, so let's break down the areas of potential impacts. And I mentioned this earlier in the video. It hasn't changed with the update here that now we have Tammy. Again, impacts are possible for these areas: Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, Antigua, Barbuda, Montserrat, Guadeloupe, Dominica, Martinique, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, and the Grenadines, and Barbados. So those are the areas with the highest chance to actually have any impacts. The areas that more than likely will not see impacts are the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, the Turks and Caicos, and no impacts for the ABC Islands, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, and the Bahamas. Sorry about that, guys. I had to jump over here to get those graphics to move, but I'm going to stay on this system from here on out, and that's going to allow us to also be able to chat. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to get back to this broad perspective. And again, if you're just tuning in, we now have Tropical Storm Tammy. Tammy's first advisory has come out from the National Hurricane Center. Tammy has winds of 40 miles an hour. It is moving west at 23. Very, very quick motion. It more than likely will slow down a little bit, but Tammy is forecast to strengthen as it makes an approach across the central, the northern Windward Islands, and eventually the Leeward Islands as well. And again, that's the center line track for the Hurricane Center, but I don't really want you to pay too close attention to that. If you look at the actual cone of uncertainty, those are the areas that we really have to monitor. And again, the same areas that I have mentioned for the last several days, all of our islands here, Martinique and Dominica, up the road towards Guadeloupe and Antigua, all of you guys, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Anguilla, on over towards even the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Every single one of those, the opportunity to be impacted with tropical storm conditions out of Tammy. As a matter of fact, again, we do have tropical storm watches that are currently in effect for Barbados, Dominica, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. Okay, so I've kind of gone over all of the newest information. We've got a lot of chat going on here right now, so I thank you guys very much. I want to actually get to some of those questions that you guys might have for us here. And again, drop a comment in the live chat. Thank you for liking and subscribing for us as well. Let's see what we got going on here, guys, and I will just start answering some of the questions that we have. And again, if you have a question, drop it in. My wife and I are on our honeymoon on Friday in St. Lucia. How are we looking? So if you're talking about Chris actually being in St. Lucia on Friday, you will see the brunt of what we're going to get out of Tammy. And I'll zoom into the St. Lucia area right now. Now, you might get lucky that on this track, the turn of Tammy north keeps you out of the worst conditions, all right? So if you're going to be in St. Lucia on Friday, I think you're okay. Meaning that I don't think there's anything you need to do. I'm not really sure there's much that you could do. Obviously, again, rain could be an issue in St. Lucia and some of the other islands, even as far south as Grenada, but the core of the winds will be north and east of that line. So we hope that for St. Lucia, we mitigate the wind issue. Rain could still be an issue there. We could still have several inches of rain. And again, the official forecast for the Hurricane Center actually does have, fairly significant rainfall totals for us here. Let me find that one more time. And I want to make sure I say it correctly here. 3 to 6 inches is what they're going for. And that's kind of a good model average. I'm going to show you the NAM model coming up as well. That's about the rainfall that they have there along that track. All right. Thank you very much for answering that question for us here. Let's see what we got here. Anyone else have a question for us? Just scrolling down. Okay, what about St. Martin? St. Martin, again, is going to be impacted same as the northern side of the Leeward Islands. I would expect conditions in St. Martin to really go downhill late in the day on Friday and then overnight into Saturday. This is all based on the current forward speed that the Hurricane Center has, which is very quick right now, west at 23. Again, we're still expecting that west to northwest turn, and it is forecast to strengthen. The Hurricane Center has even said, look, especially with a developing system like Tammy is, the intensity forecast can rapidly change. We hope it stays a tropical storm. We hope it stays a weak tropical storm. But one thing the models do have a tough time with is the intensity forecast of a developing system. It's good that we kind of have a closed center of circulation to begin to kind of track off of, but the models are much better at the forecast track rather than the intensity. So it's not going to shock me either up or down that Tammy's track stays nearly the same, but the intensity goes up a little bit. And again, right now through the islands, we're looking at winds sustained of around 55 knots or 65 miles an hour. So thank you very much for your question on that. Tropical storm is go to Puerto Rico, yes or no? At this point in time, I only expect fringe impacts out of Puerto Rico. So if we follow this center line, we really want to look to the areas east for the most significant impacts. I would expect for late Friday and Saturday for places like San Juan and Ponce and Arecibo, and then even on over towards St. Thomas and St. Croix and Roadtown. Those areas, it will be very breezy. We'll have very gusty winds, kind of, again, rotating around counterclockwise. That will probably be out of the north and west and quite fresh. We'll kick up the surf and sea conditions in that area, but no true direct impacts out of Tammy for Puerto Rico outside of those marine impacts. I wouldn't expect there to be any damaging winds or enough significant rain to cause any problems. Now, again, if this track were to slide farther west, which is still absolutely possible, we would start to talk more about Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands being more in the direct impact line. But again, right now, it is going to be for the Lesser Antilles, the Central Northern Windward Islands, and the Leeward Islands. Well, thank you very much. We'll keep a close eye on Puerto Rico. We always do. I have a lot of questions from my friends in Jamaica. And I also want to say, by the way, for Jamaica and Puerto Rico and the Bahamas, I made a separate video today about your forecast over the next 5 days. Again, there's going to be no impacts from this system from Jamaica. You guys will see your own localized showers and storms, and it's kind of covered up right now in the Kingston area. You can see that. But as you can see, you guys are so far away from this system. And I'll just zoom out just to give everyone a good look. So again, as far south as Trinidad and Tobago, you guys are going to stay far away. I've had some people in the chat let me know that they could use some rain in that area. Unfortunately, maybe outside of pulling in some moisture from the mainland with a south wind as Tammy moves north, not expecting a lot of actual impacts there. Same thing for the ABC Islands. The Cayman Islands and Jamaica, they'll see more of the localized showers and storms. And again, we really focus in on these areas. If you're just tuning in, we do have Tropical Storm Tammy now. That's why we are on live. It's great to see you. Thank you so much. We welcome you to Meteo Mundo. We love you to be a part of our community again. Look, we're live. We're taking our time. We're just, really giving you guys the information that you want. Drop a like down, drop a question. I'm happy to answer it. I love this format because I don't have anywhere to be. So we can sit here, we can chat for a while about this. But again, the biggest thing was to get the newest information out, especially for our friends in this cone, because more than likely you are the ones that will start to see tropical storm conditions beginning late tomorrow and especially through Friday and early to mid Saturday. So that's why we have a tropical storm watch for Barbados, Dominica, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. And again, what does a tropical storm watch mean? It means that tropical storm conditions are likely in your area over the next 48 hours or within 48 hours, and more than likely, based on this track, additional watches and warnings will be issued for the central and the northern Leeward Islands and potentially even the U.S. and British Virgin Islands as we go through tomorrow and especially on Friday. It's just really all about a timing thing. These are the areas that will be impacted within 48 hours, but as we go farther down the road, the farther north that you go, you'll be impacted within 48 hours, and you will also have your own tropical storm watches and warnings issued. I'm going to take a quick sip of water, and we'll get back into it here. So again, I'm just scrolling through these questions. If you got anything, if you would like to support the channel as well, you can do so down below. We're so new, we don't even have super chats yet, although we've actually hit that criteria. YouTube hasn't even caught up yet as well. So again, thanks for supporting the channels as well. Watching from St. Kitts, hello, how are you doing today? Great to see you. Hello, St. Croix, Virgin Islands. Yes, thank you very much, Monica, for saying hit that like button. I appreciate you saying that very much indeed. Watching from St. Kitts, thank you very much. I think I just mentioned St. Martin. Let's see here. I won't forget you, Northern Dutch Islands, I promise. We got you covered as well. Good night. Will Barbados be impacted? Yes, I have mentioned Barbados before. You can see Barbados, and actually, you know what? It's really interesting. There's Barbados right there. Again, you guys, I'm standing in the way now that I realize it. You guys are actually under this tropical storm watch, as I mentioned. So Barbados is going to be impacted. Now, the Hurricane Center's official track takes it a little bit north of you, but not by much. I mean, let's take a look at our spatial tool here, and I'll draw a line. So from Barbados to the edge of the potential error track, we're only 25 miles. To the center line of the track, we're only 95 miles. Tropical storm winds already extend on the northeast side by 130 miles. So that's why you guys are under this tropical storm watch. And it wouldn't shock me if St. Lucia potentially also goes under a tropical storm watch. Again, the various governments are the ones who issue this, so we're kind of cobbling this information together for us here. Like the government of Barbados and the government of Dominica and the government of France is actually who issued the tropical storm watch for Martinique and Guadeloupe. Obviously, various interests within these islands, and so the Hurricane Center takes all that information and spits it out with these advisories, but you get the picture that certain governments will be issuing watches and warnings on their own, and we'll just continue to keep you updated with that. But certainly, based on this track, anywhere north of where we already have a tropical storm watch, I would expect one. Montserrat, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis, on over towards Barbuda and Anguilla. I keep trying to say it right. It's in my head. I promise. It's like Quill, Anguilla, Anguilla, Anguilla. I promise you I'll get it down at some point in time. I'm trying. It's just because I learned it as Anguilla. Look, I learned all of the Windward and Leeward Islands as a kid. I grew up in Florida, love the Bahamas, love the Caribbean. I just learned it a certain way, but I'm working for you, and I want to make sure that I pronounce it the way that the locals do, Anguilla. So I'm doing what I can. We'll try and stick that into my head. All right, more questions. Let's see what we got here, guys. And again, you know, the thing about it is the biggest one, the reason why I wanted to go live is because we had mentioned over the last several days that more than likely we were going to get a tropical depression or tropical storm, and that's happened. So now that's happened. Now that cone, that forecast track is for the areas we just mentioned. So now we just have to be on high alert. Now we still have some time. Again, even as we head towards Grenada, more than likely even there, the conditions won't go downhill until very late tomorrow night. But Friday is going to be a rough day. It's going to be, you know, winds of 50, 60 miles an hour sustained with some higher gusts. 3 to 6 inches of rain. Obviously, flash flooding could come to impact as well, and really rough surf and sea conditions. Again, I showed you that one graphic where we had 10 to 14 foot waves. What I want to do right now is I want to show you the other model that I wanted to talk about. I've shown you the GFS model, and it's this one here, but I want to switch over to the NAM model because I can show you that. Now, the NAM model is the North American model, and it is right on the edge of this area. So you would imagine the North American model, it's going to cover the United States. If I get over to the reflectivity here, and keep asking your questions, by the way, I'm going to jump back on the chat in just a second. This one, the NAM model is much more in line with the track from the Hurricane Center. Again, I wish I could show you the approach of Tammy on the NAM, but the cutoff is literally right here. But we can get the impacts. We can see this. Look at the core of Tammy on the NAM model going right through places like Dominica and Guadeloupe and Antigua and St. Kitts and Nevis. This would also eventually put more rain into the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. So I mentioned there's still two schools of thought. You've got the weaker models, like the NAM and the European model. And then you have the stronger ones like the GFS model and what we call the HWRF. But those recurve Tammy north, okay? Stronger models, quicker recurve east of the islands, weaker Tammy through the islands, more direct impacts, but a weaker storm. But what's interesting is the Hurricane Center is taking the track of the weaker storms, but actually going with the intensity of the more stronger storms. So they've kind of centerlined the track, but they're also taking the higher end winds from the ones that keep it offshore. So it's really interesting. They've kind of gone higher, if you will, more significant impact track and higher winds associated with Tammy. And again, with a developing system, that is certainly plausible. We just have to wait and see, but most of the models agree again on having a moderate to high end tropical storm force winds. Okay. Let's go on over to what's going to be happening with the winds. And again, this is more significant for the islands. All right. So again, I want you to pay attention if you live in this area or you know people who do, because the NAM model, which is a very, agreeable model, one that I rely on a lot, does bring in a core of tropical storm force winds as we get into Friday night and into Saturday. So again, today is the 18th. If you look at your model time frame here, this is Eastern Daylight Time, but guess what? That's also Atlantic Standard Time, so this would work. And you can see that it's going right through the Dominica area on over towards Antigua. These would be the core of the winds, including Guadeloupe. So based on this model, we would certainly have direct tropical storm impacts to these areas as we go through the day on Friday. The NAM, by the way, is also a little bit slower than the timing from the Hurricane Center, all right? So again, you can see that is a little bit slower, but look at that core. Look at that core of wind wrapping up there right towards Anguilla and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. It's yet another solution that we have to keep an eye on. Look, there is no certainty right now with this track and intensity. We have a much better idea with Tammy than what we had a couple of days ago, especially now that we have the first advisory from the Hurricane Center. But certainly things can and will change, which is why we need to keep very vigilant. I'll keep doing plenty of updates for you as we go through the rest of the days here through at least the weekend. We'll give you some live updates as well. But again, just showing you that there's that difference with the NAM model as far as where the core of those winds are going to be. And just to show you one more time, the GFS model in the wind gusts, you can see the different solutions. The GFS model is much farther off towards the east. Let's get back to more questions for you here. I'll get back into that as well. And again, if you want a question answered, look how you can support the page. We'd appreciate that as well, and I'll be glad to answer those questions. Oh, like someone says the hurricane hunters landed in Barbados around 5:30 this evening. I would imagine they're going to be using certainly the islands as a landing point there, and that's not surprising. So it's going to be great. Look, hurricane hunters are vital. They give us real-time data, the drop zones, flying through the storms that they do. All of that information the hurricane hunters actually get goes right into the models that I'm showing you right now, and it makes them better. It makes them more accurate to be able to actually fly in and out of these storms and to get the true data, the true pressure, the true winds in all four quadrants. They do fantastic work. The hurricane hunters never get enough credit. And I can tell you right now, once the hurricane hunters start flying through Tammy, these models will get more and more accurate because the data will be more and more accurate as well. Again, you get better data to begin with, you're going to get better data coming out as well. All right, let's get back to any more questions that you guys might have for us here. I'm going to keep scrolling on through. Thank you for watching all the different places, Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Going to scroll back up here. And again, St. Thomas is in the house. Thank you, St. Thomas. Antigua, when will it hit Antigua? Well, let's see here. And again, I'm going to go over the general timing when I go back to, I believe, this graphic right here, and we'll get back into it here. Let's see what's happening with it again. So again, this is the broad perspective. We're going to reset here because I'm getting some information that the viewer count is going up, which is fantastic. So I think we have some new people coming in who maybe just found out that we've been going live. And again, we can, while here, guys, you know, I've already had dinner, so we're good. We can stick around. And I got to say, I love this format because, you know, if you do this for 4 or 5 minutes, I may not be able to answer every question, but as we go through time and you pop in and out, you might be able to get whatever question you have answered, and that's great. And then that's what these forecast videos that we produce are for as well. Obviously, we keep those shorter, but in a situation that we have a storm that's developed that we've talked about, we're going to jump live here on Meteo Mundo. We're going to answer your questions for you. We're going to keep you covered, and that's the most significant part about it. So you can even see the fast forward speed. So this icon is actually from the 5 p.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. You can see how rapidly Tammy has already moved west of that and a big blow up of storms. The whites that you see on this enhanced satellite imagery are the higher cloud tops. And they're quite impressive as well. A couple of things I can look at real quick. We can just kind of look at this together. I haven't looked at the water vapor imagery since the video I did this morning. Look at that moisture. Wow, look at all those blues. That's significant moisture. We mentioned how it's a little bit more ragged up north, but the Hurricane Center also said that they found tropical storm force winds 130 miles northeast of the center of circulation. I just want to make sure I got that right because, you know, there's not a lot of convection. There's not a lot of activity with it out there as well, but, you know, that is pretty impressive. Yeah. Tropical storm force winds 140 miles northeast of the center of circulation. Let's see how far 140 miles is because we can see how far those tropical storm force winds are. Well, you know what? It's going to be right basically there. So our computer system actually picked up on that. Do you see that blue, that oval? That is the tropical storm force winds that our computer system that we're using picked up on. That's fantastic. Wow, I'm impressed. It lets you know exactly where. Now, as we go through time, and I can actually do this as well with this, I can actually put on, well, we do have the wind radii on, so hopefully we'll pick that up. More than likely, as we go into time, the model is going to pick up on the tropical storm force winds along the potential path, and they'll plot those as well. So again, you're looking at the water vapor imagery. We'll switch back to the IR imagery for you here. And again, still a little bit elongated, but obviously very impressive. And you have to know it's impressive for the Hurricane Center to go from a disturbance to a tropical storm. Again, this was never a tropical depression. We didn't get a number. They found 40-mile-an-hour winds, and they said, you know what, we're making it Tammy. And again, if you're just tuning in, this is the first advisory from the Hurricane Center. Tammy is moving quickly west at 23 with a pressure of 1,007 millibars. Looking at the areas again with the watches in place, these are tropical storm watches, and they include our friends in Barbados, they include Dominica, and they include Martinique and Guadeloupe. Those are the areas right now under tropical storm watches. Tropical storm watch, tropical storm conditions are likely in your area over the next 48 hours. Tropical storm warnings, tropical storm conditions are likely or are going to happen within the next 24 to 48 hours. So again, we have the initial watches that are up, but we will get additional watches and warnings issued for the northern Leeward Islands as we go through time, as Tammy gets closer. It's just all about a time frame issue. All right, let me swing on back over here to more questions for us. You got a question, drop it in for us here. Would love to chat with you. Going to keep you up to date as well. Watching from North Trinidad, I appreciate you very much. Let's see here. Is Trinidad having any rain? Oh, you know, again, I've had a lot of comments from Trinidad and Tobago about the rain with this system, and the answer is no. You know, you guys have been extremely hot. You guys have been extremely dry. That's going to be the case. We might have had a passing shower today in a couple of spots, but no, you can see how far to the north Tammy is going to track, and the most significant moisture is going to be north and east of the center of circulation. So again, even for Grenada, I don't expect anything as well. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, maybe some wind, but probably not a lot of wind. Again, turning north. St. Lucia, about the same thing. You're right on the fringe. You're closer for sure. Barbados kind of being exposed on all sides. Again, we talked about the sea conditions where the seas, along with Tammy, could be over 10 feet. That could be a big issue. Obviously getting some potential flooding issues as well. Again, the official forecast from the Hurricane Center is 3 to 6 inches of rain through the Leeward Islands, 1 to 4 basically for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. But it really is area dependent. And you know your area very well. You know the low-lying areas where you live. You know, certain islands are impacted more by 4 inches of rain in a short amount of time than others are. But again, certainly the potential to have significant rainfall to go along with the winds. At this point in time, the winds and the rain are both moderate to moderately high problems that we could be having out of Tammy. There's no doubt about that, because you're talking about tropical storm force winds of 65 miles an hour sustained with some higher gusts. And again, for those of you just tuning back in, if I switch over to the NAM model again, which is the one which is showing you a better track relative to the other models as far as what the Hurricane Center feels like, and I throw the winds on there one more time, again, you're going to see the potential for some pretty significant winds driving through portions of the islands here. It looks like we actually that's the wrong model. That's why. There we go. All right, let me go back out into time here real quick and loop that for you. And again, you're going to see the core of these winds. And look at your scale, guys, as we get into the pinks and the purples, high-end tropical storm force. Now, these are gusts. I'll say that. They're not sustained, but it does show you where the core of those winds are going to be moving through the area. And that's going to be an issue. Let me take another quick sip of water. I always hate doing this live, but when you go on for a while, I get dry throat. I don't know about you guys, if you guys go on for any length of time. PR increasingly in the alert mode? A little bit. I would say that you have to keep an eye on this one. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. I was planning to travel to Antigua on Saturday, 8/21. Do you think the flight would be canceled on that day? Wow, that that is an interesting question. So there is no doubt, by the way, let me see here. This is Michael asking the question. All right. There is no doubt that based on the Hurricane Center's track, the roughest weather for Antigua would be late Friday and into Saturday. I honestly have no idea if it would cancel the flight, but the fact that you're looking at potentially tropical storm force winds sustained would certainly put a higher likelihood out there. I don't want to say yes or no, but I would be concerned about that flight on Saturday. And you said the 21st, so yep, that is this Saturday. Keep checking in with your airline is what I would say. Again, based on the Hurricane Center's track, we've got a significant tropical storm moving close to Antigua on Saturday. It's not a great scenario, Michael. I'll certainly tell you that. If I were traveling, I would be on high alert for there to be some kind of change to that flight. Again, not going to guarantee that there's going to be a change, but certainly the core of Tammy moving over the northern Leeward Islands at that exact time frame. So yes, I think flights could be impacted in those areas for both Friday and Saturday. So thank you for that question. And again, let me know. Keep checking back in with me, but obviously check in with your airline. That's going to be the most important thing. Will Tammy be coming to Barbados? So for Barbados, again, it's a little bit farther to the south. This model unfortunately gets cut off. The answer is you are under a tropical storm watch. So yes, Tammy is more than likely going to be impacting you. The lines in blues are tropical storm watches. And I want to get back to this model here, but I just wanted to answer that question. Yes, you should expect tropical storm conditions in Barbados as early as tomorrow night, but more than likely overnight into Friday morning and then throughout the day on Friday as well. And again, the tropical storm conditions, you notice that this watch area lines up with that NAM model in the core of the most significant winds. And I'm going to switch over to that one product I want to show you as well, as far as the potential for winds and timing. Let's do that right now, as a matter of fact, because I think that's important. I've mentioned a lot of these intensities, but let's get into where we're going to see these winds. And again, this is from the Hurricane Center. This is based off of their first advisory. So here you go. You are looking at, let me get this water bottle out of the screen. Sorry, guys. Let's look at what we're looking at for tropical storm force winds arrival times. This is the earliest arrival of tropical storm force winds. There are two different products here. This one is the one that's not like, hey, when is the absolute earliest you could see one? This is when we actually expect tropical storm conditions in your area. And that's what I wanted to show you. So again, as we go through the day tomorrow, and as Tammy is still moving fairly quickly, maybe not at 23 miles an hour, but maybe still well into the double digits. As we get towards Barbados, there's Barbados, 8 p.m. tomorrow. That's when we start to see the first tropical storm conditions moving into the Lesser Antilles as we go overnight into Friday morning, right through the heart of the northern windward and the southern Leeward Islands. And then it's all based on that curve. When does Tammy begin to recurve? But for the Leeward Islands in general, weather going downhill Friday and into Saturday. Now, again, this is the timing from the Hurricane Center. The NAM model is a little bit slower. I was talking to Michael about his flight on Saturday. You notice that these are the earliest arrival times, though. So again, even on Saturday, it's still going to be pretty rough through the northern Leeward Islands. And that line path goes as far as the eastern side of Hispaniola, but really we're looking at the eastern sides of Puerto Rico and east, because all the models make that curve at least before then. And again, it's the central and the eastern sides. Now, as far as the probability of seeing these tropical storm force winds, well, again, they're relatively high. It's the same path as you would expect. And again, we have 100% chance right now because they're occurring, but you can just draw that center line. So the Hurricane Center really does feel like, again, high end chance for tropical storm force winds with Tammy. They have Tammy strengthening, and again, right over the core of the island, 65 mile an hour sustained winds. That is significant. That certainly could cause damage. We'll get more into that over the next couple of days as we refine that forecast out of Tammy. Also looking back at the waves, because that's significant, especially for an island like Barbados or anyone on the eastern sides. Again, this is the broad perspective. If you look at your legend down low, anywhere yellow or higher to the oranges and reds, those are double-digit wave heights, and that will more than likely come with Tammy as we get into, again, late tomorrow, but especially Friday and Saturday. I'll zoom in for you there, and you can see that again. You can look at those wave heights, those yellows, oranges, and reds coming very near the islands. We're going to really kick up the surf conditions, the sea conditions. We're going to have some very gusty easterly winds, at least on the western side of things. Again, it really all depends on where the core of Tammy goes, but you get the idea that very, very rough and dangerous surf and sea conditions will accompany Tammy with winds that'll be over 10 feet. I would imagine, obviously, on the eastern side of the islands, we're going to be pushing in a fairly significant wall of water, and we'll have to be monitoring that for all the islands as well. Okay, let's get back to the product here. I got to switch over here. Sorry, guys, my automation for some reason is not working here on this live stream. So to switch different sources, I've had to kind of step off and step back on, but I think that's the last time I'm going to do it. We'll stay with this product and we'll keep going. Let's get back to any questions that we have. Hello, St. Croix. Hello, Barbados. Hi, Mervin. Good to see you. Hi, Sherry. Thank you as well. And again, you have a comment or a question, drop it in the chat below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can see that in the description. We appreciate any support that you'd like to give. And again, one of the ways that you can help us is just liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Again, we are a new channel, but we've had some tremendous growth lately, and it's all because of you, and I appreciate you very much for that. Again, we are Meteo Mundo, and one thing I'll promise you as we go over the next couple of days, we're going to keep you updated on the storm. We'll be doing multiple videos a day. Certainly the opportunity at another point in time for me to jump on back live and talk about this storm as it gets a little bit closer. I'm not done yet, but just kind of giving an overview that, again, we got you covered here. So hitting that subscribe button if you want the notifications when we go live. And also, if this looks familiar and you've been watching our live streams, this is the information that you'll get on our live stream. A lot of times when I'm not live, like I am right now, we're running our live stream, and it will give you updated real-time satellite data, updated real-time radar, updated real-time tropical tracks and forecast models and temperatures all in real time. So when we're done with this, even this evening and overnight, if you wake up and you want to pop onto the channel, go to the live tab. This will be running, and there's all different views. We zoom in and out, and we give everyone the information that they need. And so you can just kind of tune in so you can see exactly how Tammy has progressed, say over the next 6 hours or 12 hours. But again, look for another video from us at least as early as tomorrow. All right, let's get into it again. I'm going to reset. We continue to get more and more viewers, and I appreciate you very much. Again, we're live here because we have Tropical Storm Tammy, the first advisor for the National Hurricane Center. If you've been watching us the last couple of days, I've been monitoring this disturbance very closely. And this is not shocking at all that we now have a tropical storm, and you can see on this first track, this storm is headed towards the Lesser Antilles, specifically the central or the northern Windward Islands, and then portions of the Leeward Islands as well. We already have tropical storm watches that are currently in effect, and those are for, and I want to make sure I get this right, Barbados, Dominica, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. On our imagery here, they're the areas, the islands that have the blue line through them. So again, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Dominica, and Barbados. Tropical storm watch. It means that tropical storm conditions are likely within the next 48 hours. And really based on this track from Tammy, guys, it's just all about timing. Again, if you live in Montserrat or Antigua or Anguilla on over towards St. Kitts and Nevis, on this track from Tammy from the Hurricane Center, you should expect to have tropical storm watches and then warnings issued for you as well as we get closer in time. That is possible for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands as well. It's really going to be all about when Tammy decides to recurve, because that's been the big story. If you've been watching my videos the last couple of days, we've talked about how there are still differences in the models with the track and intensity. I mean, look, that's fully expected. It's very, very rare, especially with a developing storm like Tammy is, that we get the models to be in exact agreement with each other. But because we're talking about shaving these islands, either right over the islands or just to the east, it really does have significant differences in the potential impacts. Again, you're looking at our real-time high-resolution satellite imagery. You can see that it's just continuing to loop from that icon, which is the 5 p.m. advisory plot point from the National Hurricane Center. It looks like the strongest storms are actually south of that center line as of now. So this has been a very low latitude system, meaning it hasn't gone north very much, which is why the islands have come into play. Again, looking at how close we are to our friends in Barbados right now, going to draw a line from there to, let's go to just where the core of those storms are. So we're looking at a little over 500 miles, which is why we have some time in Barbados. But I do expect tropical storm conditions to begin to move into that area as early as tomorrow evening, and then farther north and west as we go overnight Thursday and then into Friday. Again, this is a live chat. I'd love to hear from you. We want to create a community here at Meteo Mundo. You know, we do that in our videos. We try and answer your questions, and that's why I'm here. If you have a question, if you live in this area, if you're traveling to this area, you have people that you know live in this area, and maybe that they don't have the weather information they need, let me know and I'll do what I can to answer the questions. And again, this is going to be a progression thing. This is the first advisory, and we will continue to provide you video updates as we go through tomorrow, Friday, into the weekend, of course, with the closer approach of Tammy. I'm going to step over here real quick. Got to grab my bottle of water, and then we're going to swing over and take a look at some of the questions that we have. And again, you got one, drop it in, and I really do appreciate you supporting the channel. Okay, let's see what we got here. I'm going to keep scrolling on down, and we'll just keep answering. Hello. Hello, Simone, and I hope you're pronouncing your name right, watching from Montserrat. Dominica is in the house, watching from Barbados. Puerto Rico, Lisa, thank you very much. Again, Puerto Rico right now, I would expect you guys to get kind of breezy conditions late Friday, Saturday. Based on this track, you're not going to have the direct impacts, but we'll be monitoring for you. Again, official forecast is 1 to 4 inches of rain for the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. I would put that in the lower amounts right now in Puerto Rico. Now, surf and sea conditions, they'll be kicked up on the eastern side of the island early part of the weekend as well. So just keep an eye out for that as well. Keo from Barbados, hello, how you doing? Great to hear you. All right, so many people, so I got to scroll down even a little bit more for us here. Hi, Natalie, watching from the Dominican Republic. Do you have any idea of the rain we could get in Antigua? Sure, we can take a look at the rain in Antigua. Again, there's a couple of different models here that I can show you. The one that I can show you for the rainfall totals is going to be the GFS model right now. Now, that model is farther to the north and east with the track of Tammy. And that's going to be significant when I show you this again. And I'm going to zoom back out here a couple of days, and then we'll put this into motion. Actually, you know what? I don't want to do that over that graphic. Let's do that over this graphic. So let's go to the winds, first of all, with Tammy. Okay, still got the winds. Nope, that's the rain. All right, so there's the rain out of it. Even though I'm showing one thing, it's actually showing me another. All right, so winds. There we go. These are the winds out of Tammy. And the reason why I'm showing you this first is on this model, you're going to see that it keeps the core of the winds just east of the islands. This would be a good solution. This would be better for us. We'd get some rain, and some of you have told me, Rusty, we need the rain. And it's a very fine-edged sword when you're talking about beneficial rain with a tropical system and then too much to cause flash flooding. But you can see that the GFS model is strong. These are winds that are going to be 50, 60, 70 knots for us here and continuing to drive just east of the island. So when I show you the rainfall totals from this model, you have to understand that it's keeping the core of the storm east of the island. So the majority of the heaviest rain is also going to be on the eastern side of the islands as well. So let's switch over real quick to the total precipitation. I will put that into motion. We'll let this run up. Here's what I will say, who asked me that question. I apologize. The chat has gone by so fast, but it is for Antigua. The Hurricane Center is calling for 3 to 6 inches of rain, okay? 3 to 6 inches of rain right now is the official forecast. That includes all of the central and the northern Windward Islands and the Lesser Antilles. Now, obviously, there's going to be locally higher amounts, and it will vary, but that's the first broad brush look. So when you look at this and what do the colors mean, look at your legend. Again, this GFS model has over 10 inches of rain offshore, all right? It doesn't have the heavier rain coming into the islands, at least as of yet. But as I've mentioned over the last couple of days with the GFS model, that almost every time we get a new model run, it sneaks it a little bit closer to the island. So am I concerned that we could have more rain into the area and certainly more wind even on the GFS model? Absolutely. Now I can also query this, which is a very cool feature of this. And so you can see it's only showing Antigua with about 1.5 inches of rain at most. But look how when I come over here, you can see the 10, 12-inch core of rain, and that's not that far away. I mean, there's a tight gradient based on the center track. So if the GFS model were to sneak even farther west, as it has been over the next couple days before Tammy actually gets here, now you are looking at that 2, 3, 4-inch line getting closer to the islands. And that's what the Hurricane Center is actually saying. They don't actually believe the GFS track, or they're actually discounting it at least a little bit as now. But again, I can show you that. Let's see here. I can zoom down. There's Barbados. Barbados would have a little bit more rain on the GFS model, but again, we're still well away from the core of that. So that's the GFS model, keeping the strongest winds and rain away from the islands, but it also is the strongest model as far as Tammy, where some of the members of the GFS model actually have it becoming a hurricane. Now, I don't anticipate that. Okay, that's not the forecast from the Hurricane Center. They believe that it is going to stay a tropical storm, again, basically through its entire time in the islands, and has it with winds of 65 miles an hour. But that's significant. You know, wind damage obviously will come with Tammy if we get those winds. The winds are already 40 miles an hour right now, and the Hurricane Center just feels like that will continue to strengthen. I'm going to show you the NAM model again, and the reason why I want to show you that model for our friends who maybe are just tuning in is this is a model that's much more in line with the Hurricane Center as far as the actual track of Tammy, taking it right through the northern side of the Windward and then eventually the northern side of the Leeward Islands and the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. Again, this model unfortunately cuts off right at Barbados, so I can't show you kind of the evolution before it moves into the islands, but you get a good idea if you look in the top left-hand side of your screen of that model running, of the potential impacts. And again, these are significant winds, 50, 60, 70 knots, which equate to 60, 70, maybe even 80 mile an hour winds. I don't expect, again, tropical storm force, I don't expect hurricane sustained winds out of Tammy moving through the islands. Tammy is actually potentially going to strengthen even a little bit more as it goes north of the Leeward Islands. But at this point in time, we're not looking at hurricane conditions, but potentially mid to high-end tropical storm conditions. And you can see that track. That track would obviously put more of the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. Martin even into play as well. Let's keep answering some questions for you here. I'd love to hear from you. First of all, thank you very much. I keep hearing that we're getting more and more viewers, and I appreciate you very much. We welcome you to Meteo Mundo. Again, we are live right now. We are live streaming, talking about the first advisory from Tropical Storm Tammy. The statistics for Tammy on the top of your screen, those will stay there. Winds are 40 miles an hour, quickly moving west, 23 with a pressure of 1,007 millibars. And again, on this track, Tammy is expected to impact portions of the Lesser Antilles as early as tomorrow night. and more than likely the northern and Windward Islands and the remainder of the Leeward Islands throughout the day on Friday and into early and midday on Saturday. And again, it's going through exceptionally warm water, 29, 30 degrees Celsius water, exceptionally hot. So the strengthening trend of Tammy is expected to happen. Actually very thankful that we're not talking about a hurricane because, earlier in the week, more of the models were trying to pick up on an even stronger storm heading this way. So that's good news. Hello, Kimmy, watching from St. Lucia, wants to know about St. Lucia. We've certainly talked about St. Lucia, but I'm happy to go back over that again. Best way for me to do that is actually to go back to this product and showing you again the broad perspective. So let's look at timing again. I'm going to zoom in pretty close here to the timing of this. So this dot right here would represent where Tammy is going to be tomorrow night at 8 p.m. This dot is going to represent where Tammy is going to be Friday morning at 8 a.m. and then Friday night at 8 p.m. So again, you can see that time frame. You're looking at late tomorrow night, conditions really going downhill Friday morning, and then throughout the day on Friday. Now, as far as St. Lucia goes, you guys are right on the edge of being in that cone of uncertainty. There's a higher chance than not, meaning it's more likely that the core of Tammy will stay north and east of you. That would be good news for the wind and the rain, because I expect the strongest winds and the highest rainfall totals to be along the center track of Tammy and then to the east. But again, I don't want you to focus just on that center line. That's just the hurricane center's kind of first path, if you will. But that cone of uncertainty means that even the hurricane center is building in this error. So if we look at that, I mean, there's a possibility Tammy could be right over Martinique, or there's a possibility Tammy could be 150 so miles away to the north and east if it were to stay on the eastern side of this envelope, of this cone of uncertainty that we talk about. So nuances in the track of Tammy, which are still to be discovered, are going to greatly influence the amount of impacts you're going to see. Again, I don't have all the answers for you. I have a lot of them, and there's a lot more information that we can really ground into right now, and we can talk more in absolutes about certain things. But as far as the amount of rain and the exact winds that you're going to see, that is still watch and wait mode. But I would anticipate tropical storm conditions, winds of over 40 miles an hour, and the potential for some flash flooding issues in all the areas that I just mentioned. And again, we still have some tropical storm watches that are currently in effect. Now, St. Lucia is not one of the islands under a tropical storm watch. Barbados is, and so is Martinique and Guadeloupe and Dominica, but not St. Lucia. So thank you so much for asking that question. We appreciate you very much. Watching from St. Martin. Thank you, Carlos. Several people have actually tuned in from St. Martin, and I appreciate you watching. I am watching from Tortola. Thank you, Austin, very much for that as well. Monica says, watching from St. Kitts. What about us in St. Kitts and Nevis? I'm happy to answer that question for you, Monica. Thank you so much for asking it. And again, thanks for tuning in for Meteo Mundo. Again, relatively new channel, but we've really had a nice little following, and we appreciate you very much for that as well. So hitting that like button helps us out, subscribing helps us out. Maybe that's how you found us. And if you want to support the channel, again, we don't have super chats yet. We're so new that YouTube just hasn't caught up to what we've been doing. You can find out ways to help the channel in the description below. So let's get into St. Kitts, and we'll talk about our friends up there, including Anguilla. Anguilla, I'm getting there. Like, my brain is like, that's how you pronounce it. Barbuda and Antigua and Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis. So let's talk about these areas in general, because I don't expect there to be much of a difference in what you're going to see. Based on this track, this is Saturday morning. So from Guadeloupe north, Antigua, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, Barbuda areas, northern side of the Leeward Islands, you should anticipate tropical storm conditions beginning to develop as early as Friday night. You should then anticipate there to be a core of wind and rain over your area throughout Friday evening, overnight, and into Saturday morning, and then conditions beginning to improve as Tammy moves away. Now, Tammy should keep some fairly quick forward speed. It's moving west at 23. That's good news, because to find out that on the GFS model it's producing rains of over 10 inches, even as quick as it's forecast to move, shows you the significant moisture associated with it. So again, to answer your question, for St. Kitts and Nevis, tropical storm conditions are likely to be moving in Friday night and then throughout the day on Saturday, maybe getting better by the end of Saturday. At this point in time, you do not have a tropical storm watch or warning, but based on the Hurricane Center's track, I would anticipate you getting a tropical storm watch tomorrow and then that being upgraded to a tropical storm warning. It's only based on time. They issue these 48 hours in advance. So because we're just on that border, if you will, this is Wednesday evening. The earliest that you would see tropical storm conditions is Friday evening. We're right around or just more than 48 hours out. They haven't issued those watches. There is a possibility. It wouldn't like shock me if at some point in time we actually see additional watches issued as I'm live on the air, because again, the local governments are the ones that are issuing these watches. So, we can kind of just watch together, but right now it's Barbados, it's Dominica, it's Martinique, it's Guadeloupe. But based on this track, all of the areas of the central or the northern Leeward Islands are going to fall underneath that. It's a little bit more questionable for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands. It's going to be close. I think it really depends. I think we'd have to get Tammy to get a little bit farther west than this center line to really pull in true tropical storm conditions, to have watches and warnings issued for Road Town, including St. Thomas and St. Croix. Puerto Rico is even farther west. So again, I'm not anticipating that. I would anticipate them issuing some rough surf and sea conditions out of that as well. So we would have some maritime interest. And again, if you're just tuning in on the eastern side of the Leeward Islands, we're forecasting over 10-foot waves coming in with Tammy. So any boating interest, please keep that in mind. And again, those will begin to kick up as the core of Tammy moves through. All right, let's answer some more questions here. Hello, Bahamas. Juliet, great to hear from you. Again, you guys are well away. I made a separate video for the areas that aren't going to be impacted, including Jamaica, the Bahamas, and even Puerto Rico. You can find that on our homepage if you want the 5-day forecast for the Bahamas. Don't go away right now, Juliet, but we got you covered. I know we're focusing a lot on Tammy for very good reason, but here at Meteo Mundo, we're going to cover the entire Caribbean and the Bahamas for you. So look for that video and the 5-day forecast. You're a lot drier, I can say for sure, than what we're going to see here. Thank you very much, guys. Hello from St. Croix. Marta says hi. Don't forget everything that passing in comes near Barbados first. Yes, you're exactly right, Alvin. And I mentioned that Barbados is going to be the island that will see the impacts first. And that is why you guys are under a tropical storm watch. Barbados is obviously east of the rest of the islands. There is a track, and I mentioned this earlier, Alvin, if you weren't tuning in at the time. Barbados may not have the core of Tammy move through, but I drew that center line out, and from the southern side of that track of uncertainty, Barbados is only 25 miles away, and then from that center line, you're only 100 miles away. And at this point in time, even though it's on the northeast side, tropical storm force winds extend 140 miles to the northeast of Tammy currently. And more than likely, that tropical storm force wind field will get even wider. So certainly Barbados will more than likely see tropical storm conditions for a time. And again, for you, Alvin, that could start as early as tomorrow night. Thank you very much. Of course, we got Barbados covered as well. And again, Barbados may miss the core, but that may not be the case for all these other areas that we mentioned here. And again, you get into closer to where this center line is and east, and that's where we expect the more significant conditions for you. And I do want to go back real quick and just show you what Tammy looks like right now, because I'm curious as well. Again, even from doing the video this morning, I could tell Tammy was getting stronger. The low-level circulation was looking more impressive. The wind shear that it was fighting on the western side was gone. You can see the blow up of storms. It's interesting that even if you take this centerline track right now from the hurricane center, the majority of what Tammy is south of that line. Doesn't mean that it's going to wobble. It won't wobble back up towards the north, because again, even though we have a tropical storm, the center is still very ill-defined. It's more than likely under or just to the north and east of that blow-up of storms. And I mentioned it earlier. If you see, this is the plot from the 5 p.m. advice from the Hurricane Center. By the way, that's Eastern Daylight Time and Atlantic Standard Time. They're both the same this time of the year. If you see this blue oval that's kind of highlighted, those were the tropical storm force winds that were picked up to 140 miles east of the center of circulation. So really, what you have is you have more storms, very heavy rainfall right now on the southwest side of Tammy, and then you have the strongest winds on the northeast side. And all of this still has to kind of collapse around and get going for Tammy to become stronger. But again, there's not really any wind shear between here and the Leeward Islands and the sea surface temperatures are outrageous. They're 29, 30 degrees Celsius. There's a lot of heat energy, and that is one of my concerns. Again, I grew up in Florida. I worked in Florida the last 10 years. I've seen so many of these storms blow up into things that the models can't even pick up on, right? I don't expect that to be the case with Tammy because we don't have days and days, but the models tend to underdo the intensity of these storms because they just can't have a great handle on how hot the water temperatures are. And it's not just at the surface, there's a big depth of exceptionally hot temperatures that these storms feed off of. So I have my concerns. I'm in agreement with the Hurricane Center of a 65 mile per hour storm coming through the islands, but we have to watch and wait and see. There is time for Tammy to become stronger. And the Hurricane Center even mentioned it in their first advisory. They're like, look, guys, this is our initial ability to put this storm out as a 55 knot storm, but there could be adjustments once Tammy's current intensity and structure become clearer. Even they're putting in that caveat right there. They say we expect a 55 knot storm, 65 mile per hour winds through the islands beginning tomorrow night, but especially through Friday and Saturday. But there's that caveat that once the intensity becomes clearer, as Tammy becomes more defined, that could more than likely potentially go higher. I mean, I hope it goes weaker. If we get a stronger storm, we have to cross our fingers that we get the recurve quicker to the north and to the east. I think that's the potential saving grace out of a storm that's more vertically stacked, because it'll be influenced more by the Atlantic ridge of high pressure to the north. I can kind of show you that if I zoom out a little bit here. We have the Atlantic ridge of high pressure here, okay? There's actually a nor'easter developing on the eastern side of the United States. So there's going to be a weakness that Tammy's going to ride through between the western edge of this ridge of high pressure, which is pulling east, and that developing nor'easter. The European model is flatter with the ridge. It's farther west, which is why it's pulling Tammy more into the islands. The GFS model has more of that recurve. Again, you're looking at the Hurricane Center, which is basically in line with the European model. The GFS model is slightly east of this. It's trying to get into that weakness in the ridge a little bit quicker, and a more vertically stacked stronger storm could be more influenced by that ridge. So, that's something that the models have shown, a stronger storm. The HWRF, by the way, model is in agreement with the GFS. It's stronger, but it's also east of the island. So let's hope that if Tammy does get stronger, and I hope it doesn't, that it takes that quicker recurve. But again, right now, we're going off of what the Hurricane Center is putting in this advisory, and that's winds of 65 miles an hour right through the heart of the islands, beginning late tomorrow, but especially on Friday and Saturday. Back to your questions here, guys. Watching from Maryland. Hi, Kimmy. Good to see a U.S. Resident watching. I appreciate everyone watching from across the Caribbean, the Bahamas, and everywhere else. If it's coming to St. Croix as a hurricane, okay. Again, I'm not calling for hurricane strength, no doubt about it, at least at this point in time. Is there the possibility? Absolutely. Remember, we went from a disturbance to a tropical storm like that. Don't expect it. We're talking more tropical storm at this point in time. Hi, Trinidad and Tobago, any rain for us? I've answered that question, but I'll do it again. You guys are too far to the south, all right? Unfortunately, I know you guys have been extremely hot and dry, and there are our friends in Trinidad and Tobago. You're too far away from getting any direct impacts. You might get some storms coming off the mainland, but there's not going to be any impacts directly from what Tammy is. Got another question about the British Virgin Islands from Joshua. Again, based on this track, right now, for the British Virgin Islands, this is what I would expect. I would expect a breezy late Friday and Saturday, strong northeast winds driving into the islands, kicking up the surf and sea conditions, and bringing tropical downpours. It's about as 50-50 as you would get right now, whether you guys would be under a tropical storm watch. I honestly think that based on this track, you wouldn't be, because the core of Tammy will stay far enough east. But if that center of circulation were to slide ever so slightly west, I think the Hurricane Center would issue a tropical storm watch for you based on the fact that, again, when you're looking at core winds of 65 miles an hour, and you just have to have 39 mile an hour winds to have a tropical storm watch or warning issued for your area, there's a lot of leeway there as far as intensity to have tropical storm watches and warnings issued for the British Virgin Islands and for the U.S. Virgin Islands. But again, right now, based on this track, more than likely not, I'd keep tuning in, Joshua. I think the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and even the eastern sides of Puerto Rico are the areas that I don't have the most confidence in. Because again, based on this track, more than likely you wouldn't see much, but just a nudge west, and you guys would start to get more into the significant core of tropical storm conditions. I will say that the Hurricane Center right now is putting 1 to 4 inches of rain in your area. I would go with the lower amounts at this point in time. I wouldn't be too concerned about any flooding there as of now. But again, we still have a few more days for the track and the intensity to change, and that more than likely is going to happen at least at some point in time. Let's swing on over back to our models here. I think that's important for folks to get an idea of what we might be expecting. And I want to get back over to this view indeed, and I'm going to put this back into motion. This is going to be your GFS model and your reflectivity. So again, the GFS model, stronger storm, keeping it just east of the islands. You can see that. That's an intense storm on the GFS model, but let's hope that that track holds true. And again, the other models that are stronger are in agreement with keeping it east of the islands. That's significant. If we can get this storm to turn east quick enough, we would avoid the majority of the strongest conditions throughout the islands. That would be great news. It's a little bit more unlikely, I would say. The Hurricane Center is discounting this track. But again, I've mentioned it. The Hurricane Center is actually going kind of top. They're going with the track that impacts the islands the most, and they're going with the higher side of the intensity as well. The European model is actually weaker with the storm than what the Hurricane Center has. So the Hurricane Center says, we're going to kind of believe the GFS model intensity, but we kind of going to go with the European model a little bit more as far as the track and put the core of what Tammy is going to be right over the island. So let's look at wind for us here as well. Let me switch over to the wind product for you real quick. And again, these are going to be your gusts. They're not sustained winds, and that is an important note to say that, look, these aren't sustained winds, but it gives you an idea of the field, the core of tropical storm force winds. And if you've been watching my videos the last couple of days, the GFS model has gotten farther west and farther west and farther west, meaning it hasn't been a good trend as far as the closeness to the islands. There's still a bit of a buffer, but there's not a bit of a buffer as well. So that's something that we're going to have to, again, closely monitor. But that wind field just east of the islands would be fantastic. But again, that's only one model. The Hurricane Center does have that wind coming right over the islands. Let's answer a few more questions. We'll get out of here for us here. St. Martin, certainly I've covered you guys, but I'm going to go over it for you one more time. Actually, I think what I'm going to do, and I appreciate all of you viewing, I really do, is we're going to go over things one more time, and then we'll kind of call it for this live chat right now. But again, before you get out of here, hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. That helps out the channel and the whole team behind Meteo Mundo. It's not just me. There's other people involved, and they're working their tails off as well behind the scenes. And I appreciate you guys appreciating them by doing that. And again, if you want to support the channel, in the description, you can see how to do so as well. So let's reset this one more time, friends. And I'm going to go island by island one more time, and then we'll say goodnight for now. Again, this is the first advisory from Tropical Storm Tammy. Tammy has winds of 40 miles an hour. It is moving west at 23. The pressure initially is 1,007 millibars. Obviously, Tammy looks much more impressive on satellite imagery this evening. Again, it might be bobbling a little bit to the south of west at this point in time. The core or the center of circulation would still be located right about here, but you can see the blow up of storms. Now, based on this track, and again, we'll continue to get updates from the Hurricane Center, we would start to see tropical storm conditions moving into portions of the Leeward Islands as early as tomorrow night, especially for our friends in the Barbados area. As a matter of fact, for Barbados, for Dominica, for Martinique and Guadeloupe, you guys are under tropical storm watches at this point in time. These are the areas, the islands that we have the blue lines through, tropical storm watches. Additional tropical storm watches are likely, based on the track of Tammy, for the remainder of the Lesser Antilles starting tomorrow. All right, and once we get within that 48-hour time frame, based on this track, I'm pretty confident that we're going to have tropical storm watches and then tropical storm warning. So there will be upgrades to this as well, because the Hurricane Center has the winds of Tammy moving through the islands of 55 knots or 65 miles an hour. Again, it's 40 right now. So an increase up to 65 miles an hour is the official forecast from the Hurricane Center. I never want you to focus on the center line. That is the center track from the Hurricane Center. The cone of uncertainty are on both sides, but again, the impacts from tropical systems are felt well beyond just that center line and even the cone. I do expect the strongest winds and the highest rainfall totals to be along the center and the eastern sides of the island. So again, we'll start off kind of going area by area for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. More than likely, based on the track for Tammy, you would not fall under a tropical storm watch. It would be a little bit higher chance for the British and U.S. Virgin Islands. We'll monitor the situation for you. If Tammy were to track farther west, then there would be a higher chance you would fall under a tropical storm watch or warning. Look out for rough surf and sea conditions, breezy tropical downpours late Friday and into Saturday. For the northern side of the Lesser Antilles, you know what? I don't want to do it this way. This would be horrible because I'm going back in time. Let me do it this way. Let's start from the beginning and go to the end. That seems like a better idea, Rusty. Let's do that. So let's start with the areas that aren't going to be impacted in the southern side of the Windward Islands. Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, on over towards St. Vincent and the Grenadines, not really expecting impacts for you. Barbados, tropical storm watch, tropical storm conditions possible as early as tomorrow night. St. Lucia, not a tropical storm watch as of yet. Core of Tammy based on this track would be north and east of you, but I would expect very breezy conditions to move in again late Thursday night, but especially overnight into Friday morning, then throughout the day on Friday. For Martinique and Dominica, you are under a tropical storm watch right now. More than likely will be upgraded to a tropical storm warning based on the current track from Tammy. Same thing for our friends in Guadeloupe. Your timing really begins on Friday morning throughout all of Friday, and then just based on the forward speed, potentially ending either late Friday night or early on Saturday. And then for all the islands to the north, that includes Montserrat, Antigua, St. Kitts and Nevis, Anguilla, and Barbuda. All of the areas that I just mentioned, I want to make sure I don't forget anyone, but I think I got everyone covered there. Basically anywhere from Montserrat north, St. Martin included in that, by the way. You guys are going to see, based on the track and the official forecast as far as forward speed, tropical storm conditions in your area beginning late Friday night and then throughout the day on Saturday. Again, there is certainly some wiggle room within that. But for these areas of the Leeward Islands, I would anticipate you to also fall under tropical storm watches and eventually tropical storm warnings. It's only the periphery areas like the British and U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico that more than likely that won't be happening. All right, friends, I hope we answered all of your questions here at Meteo Mundo. We still have some time. So here's what's going to be happening. First of all, if you're new to the channel, thank you very much. We appreciate you. But when we get done with this, we are going to be live streaming. And what we do is we take our computer system and we run it live for you. You're going to get real-time updates, high-resolution satellite, radar, the track of Tammy, the forecast models of Tammy. They're going to update in real time for you. Temperatures as well. That will be live streaming. Just go to the live tab. I would check in with that every so often and just see the newest information. We have all different viewpoints set up. And it's not just going to be for Tammy. We'll be looking across the entire Caribbean and the Bahamas, but obviously a lot of the focus will be on Tammy for that. I'll be doing updated videos, one starting tomorrow morning, but I'll be providing updates as necessary. And if we need to go live again, we will certainly do that. But again, for our friends in the northern Windward Islands and the Leeward Islands, Tropical Storm Tammy, based on this track for the Hurricane Center, is headed your way starting tomorrow night, Friday, and into Saturday. But again, this is not certainly goodbye. We're going to keep you updated right here in Meteo Mundo with the latest on Tammy. I want to thank you guys for tuning in to our first live stream. We appreciate you very much, and we promise throughout the Caribbean and the Bahamas, we have you covered here at Meteo Mundo. Have a good night, friends, and I will see you soon.
Mundo.